Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Bètá Convo. I am your host, Nadia Ike. And first of all, before we start and get into today's episode, I just want to say a happy new year to all of you. I know last year was a little bit crazy and, the world turned upside down, but we're really hoping that you're having a restorative start to the new year. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to Bètá Convo. Our goal here is really to give athletes the opportunity and the platform to share their stories and really brand themselves as more than just the sport. On today's episode, we are excited to be joined here by my Nigerian sister, Chioma Onyekwere, who is also a thrower and an African champion. Welcome, Chioma. We're so excited to have you here. But before we dive into the session, why don't you give our audience a little bit of a background on who you are and your athletic journey?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show. So, my name is Chioma. I am a Nigerian thrower. I currently throw discus for Team Nigeria, and I've been competing with them since 2016. I started working with Team Nigeria back at my very first African Championships in South Africa in 2016, and then following that, came back to Asaba for the second my second African Championships, where I actually placed gold and was able to move on to the Continental Championships in the Czech Republic. And then last year, well, I guess not last year, 2019, I was able to compete in Doha and was only just one spot away from making it to the finals. So that is me.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we're really excited to get to know you. And so for people that don't know you, right, are you born and raised in the US?
I am born and based in US. I am actually, I grew up in Nigeria. I grew up in school in Lagos. My mom owns a school in Lagos, and I was in school there. But I am a triplet, so there was a bit of complications with the pregnancy. So my mom needed to have us here in the U.S. With a specific doctor that my aunt recommended. So us being triplets, I am U.S. Born, but shortly after we were born, we went back to Nigeria, and I went to school there up until I was 9 years old, and then came back to the U.S. for my older siblings to go to school here in the U.S. following boarding school.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, a triplet. And so I don't get to talk to many of them. I think I know only one other set of triplets in my whole entire life. So I'm excited to meet you. And so in terms of training and deciding to compete for Nigeria, was that sort of a natural transition for you in terms of deciding whether or not you wanted to compete for the US, or did you try to go the US route and then go to the Nigerian team?
No, so kind of shortly right after I had, because I didn't want to go into competing professionally until I was completely done with my student athlete career at University of Maryland. So shortly after competing, I knew I wanted to go to Team Nigeria. So I graduated 2016 of that year, and soon after that, I got in contact with Coach Gabe, who's the one who kind of recruited me for Team Nigeria. And for me, it was kind of like a done deal. Because I'd only really interacted with them. I hadn't really interacted with the U.S. team. So in my mind, it was just Team Nigeria I wanted to compete for. And I also was very big since I do have a lot of still roots in Nigeria. And although still doing school for a majority of my time here in the U.S., my roots still felt very much grounded there. And I definitely wanted to come back and give back to the nation.
Absolutely. And so in a sport that, like being a thrower, that's not as, showcased as like the sprints event or, every other event, what do you think that, the African continent can do to better support athletes like us who are in those low key type of events?
Yeah, I do. It is unfortunate that events like the field events aren't showcased as much as the bigger sprinting events. I would say just constantly working to showcase the athletes in the field events, because we do compete at very high levels. I've competed with like Olympic level athletes, but level athletes, it's not showcased as much. And I've been in very big competitions. Even I think in my Doha competition, when I was one spot off of making the finals, no one really was even really watching that competition. But being an athlete in the field event, it was a very intense competition because constantly it was everyone just fighting for a spot. So I do think just paying attention to some of the field events, because you may be missing very big competitions, and does get very exciting. Similar to in Doha, Joe Kovacs was competing against a lot of the bigger shot putter boys, and they all hit 22 meters, which is very big in the shot put. And Joe was able to get that win and that championship in Doha. So they are very intense things. We just need more people to keep an eye out for these field events, because very big things happens and you get something very similar to almost world record breaking moments if you pay attention to the field events.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I think that what a lot of people don't know and don't realize is that with the field events, you have to be at least top 32 in the world to even be there. And it's not the same way that the sprints operate, where they have such a huge group of people that go. And so a lot of the times when field events are competing, it's the top people in the world that are competing. And so, like you said, anything could happen, at that time. But I'm going to shift a little bit over into you. And so the training for, you're training for 2020 Olympics, and then much like all of us was shocked that that wasn't going to happen. How did you adjust, and what does your training look like now current pandemic world?
Yeah, when it all happened, I guess it kind of all came at a shock, because I was actually able to be one of the very few athletes who was still able to compete for the 2020 season. I opened up my season in very early March, and that was in North Carolina, and I was able to have my best season opener. I think I threw like 57 meters at the time. So I had my best season opener, and I was looking forward to coming to the national championships, National Sports Festival in Nigeria, and competing. And then right then everything got canceled. So then it went from waiting and still trying to train and then prepare for the 2020 Olympics, and then that got postponed. So I think, like me and many other athletes, it affected us quite a bit because there was a lot of uncertainty in the sport. I went from traveling quite frequently for my event and being able to go to the weight room, because a lot of the throws, it's very heavy on focusing on weightlifting and getting stronger and building that strength and building that speed. So here in the US, some of the gyms got shut down completely. They were just started opening up, I think maybe August. So it was definitely a very hard time not having gyms where you could consistently train at. And some gyms, when they did open, they were at a much lower capacity, like sometimes 50% capacity. So you wouldn't always get a chance to come into the weight room. So it affected me quite a bit. But right now, I think with the gyms kind of opening at 50%, I relocated to a smaller gym where there was only a couple athletes who were like very serious on the sport. So I'm able to get a time slot there to get my weightlifting in. I try to throw outdoors as much as possible as I can. Obviously, being in the US and winter time is coming, there's snow on the ground, so it doesn't allow me to throw. So I kind of just switched to more heavy drilling, trying to get really focused on my technique and develop that muscle memory in order to come out big and strong for the 2021 season.
Right. And so how are you feeling? I mean, the whole outdoor season was canceled for everybody, and it doesn't really look much like we're going to have a solid indoor season either. So how are you feeling physically and confidence-wise ahead of, the games for 2021?
Yeah, so for me, I finished my 2019 season ranked 13 at the world with the World Championship ranking. Um, and I finished just one spot away from final. So I was sitting pretty good. 2019 season and 2020 season, I was coming in way stronger than I did the previous year. And with having that full year, not really focused on competing, just working on technical gain, And then also I have a good chunk. I don't compete indoors for discus, so I have a much longer time than other athletes to now also just really focus on my event and focus on those technical skills. I feel pretty good because now I've been able to develop skills that I wouldn't have had a chance to previously. And now with gyms opening and being able to lift as frequently as I would have liked, I'm getting stronger, and I feel fairly confident as I did just last year, right prior to the 2020 season.
Wow. Well, that's great to hear. And I'm happy for you. I think for a lot of us, the pandemic was almost a blessing in disguise, because likewise for me, I never had the time to let, some certain injuries heal, and always competing back to back to back. And so this time gave me that window to just let heal, work on the things that I need to work on, take the time to like really fine tune stuff. And so with a lot of athletes that I know that are, we're also training, it's kind of like, okay, although we were in shock and we didn't like it, it really gave us the time to, take a step back. And so for you, as you think about it, your confidence is there, you're feeling good, feeling great. What are some of your goals for this year?
Yeah, so a big goal, similar to I think every athlete, is obviously competing at the highest level. I want to win. So coming in, I know we postponed the African Championship. So in Nigeria, I want to hold on to my title and come in for a third championship and winning that. I want to continue to stay number one in Africa for the women's discus. I want to make the Olympic team and also make the Olympic finals and potentially bring a medal home for Nigeria when it comes to Olympic Games. My main focus and my main goal for 2021 is just maintaining to stay on top. I would like to continue to be on the top 25 for the world rankings for this upcoming year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so what are some of what would you say? Once again, I know how the track world works in terms of like financial support for field events. And so how would you say that has affected, reaching those goals, if at all?
Yeah, I say it does hinder quite a bit because a lot of the times financially I'm self-funding myself, which kind of goes in role on why I'm working as an engineer on top of still pursuing a professional career. So it is hindering because most of those bigger competitions where it will improve your world ranking involve traveling. It often also involves traveling overseas and spending a lot of time in Europe, and obviously those require funds. So it does limit my chances of going on these bigger competitions, working with higher level, bigger athletes and competing against them to kind of just get into that mood of heavy competition. Because oftentimes in the meantime, competing in here in the US, it's mostly just kind of me competing against myself. And that's not going to give you the same drive and preparation as you would in these bigger championship meets where you're competing against someone who could take your number one spot easily for you. So you're really fighting, you're really honed into your skill, you're really focused. So it is quite hindering not having the sponsorship that most, like for most field athletes, they often struggle with that because most of it goes to the running event. So it is hindering, but I just try to focus on what I can do and what's in my control and try to bring the best outcome I possibly can.
Right. And so, in terms of your experience, do you happen to have any contracts, or are you part of a track club or anything like that supports you at all?
Yeah, so I'm part of I guess like a track club. I work with Garage Strength. That's currently where my coach is and based, and he mostly just hosts meets for his athletes, which has been pretty helpful, like even during the pandemic. So it was just a short knit of his athletes being able to compete and having a constant facility to train at during the pandemic. And it allowed us to get still some marks throughout the year because I was still able to compete in end of July, just to see where I'm at in the season and see what improvements have been made throughout. So that helps with just having open meets and having a little bit higher level athletes that you can kind of like have support from.
Right. And so from your perspective, what do you think needs to change about I guess the track and field world in order to support athletes better. I think personally, I've always said that I think that when brands look at athletes, they just limit us to, just being a track athlete or whatever. But like for someone like you, you're also an engineer. You have other things that you can do. And I think that in terms of sponsorship, a lot of brands could be more creative in the way that they partner with athletes to help support their dream. So I'm curious what you think and if there have been any opportunities for that to happen.
Yeah, I agree completely, because especially with, I think, with a lot of field events, similar to, I think, also running events, you have to have a lot of kind of like personality kind of going into it. And I think a lot of field events do have a lot of personality, because everything's always so down to the wire. Like, you never really know what could happen. Someone could just out of nowhere, like, jump completely farther, or throw farther, or jump higher, out of nowhere. So you're constantly on the edge of your seat for those events. And I think that's when you do kind of see a lot of the athletes' personalities come out. And also, I think, overall, being more than an athlete, we bring so much more to the brand. Like, for example, working as a woman, in a highly science field and in engineering, obviously, which is very competitive. It's mostly a male field for engineering. So doing that, it's gonna have more younger girls, younger athletes kind of like look up to that. So I think it really sets a brand for other sponsorships, saying like, hey, like she does athletics, and she also works in the science field. So I think if they look at overall brand of what athletes bring to the table, they will see and get inspired, and that will also bring more customers and benefit the athlete, and as well benefit the sponsors.
Right, exactly. And honestly, that's what the goal here is with Bètá Convo, is really to create this space where, people are getting to see us as more than just the sport. I think part of the issue is it isn't that, brands don't see athletes as more than the sport. I just think there's an ignorance to athletes being more than the sport. I think people generally view that individuals as one-dimensional. You should have one career, have one thing you're passionate about, and pursue that for the rest of your life. But fortunately for athletes, there's so many transferable skills that are happening on the track or on the field, whatever sport you're playing. There's so many transferable skills that are happening that are, that can make you successful in other fields. And so I'm thinking about you as an engineer in a male dominant space. I'm pretty sure that, there's some things that, like your competitive edge or your ability to work under pressure that have made you very successful. And so as we are shifting gears to talk a little bit about your career outside of the sport, why don't you start by telling us a little bit of how do you think your experience as an athlete has prepared you to be an engineer?
Yeah, I think work as an athlete has significantly even just helped build a lot of people skills, as well as also build a lot of time management, and just kind of a lot of organization skills. Obviously, I went to University of Maryland and had a scholarship there for track and field. So I was studying engineering on top of also competing at high level meets and Big Ten championships and NCAA AA championships. So with that came a lot of time management on focusing on how to balance these two goals. So I was still heavily focused on my studies, as well as still heavily focused on being the best I could athletically, working really hard in the weight room, and also training very hard. So I think being a student athlete, it really helps you kind of open yourself up to be multidimensional. It also helps with people skills. There's not many people like who can kind of like walk in a room and have easy conversation, especially oddly enough in the engineering world. There's some people who don't have the best skills for speaking in public. So I think being a student athlete, being frequently around other people, communicating with different coaches, working with your teammates, you build those people skills. And then also being an athlete, I had to understand my goals in the weight room, as well as my technical goals, as well as my team goals. So make sure that you're organized and you're very goal orientated. You're focused. You're responsible. You're looking out for your community, and those are stuff that I think people in the workforce are looking for, because that obviously are are skills that don't come easily to everyone. Those are skills either people have based on learning, or skills that people have just learned to have or adopted from watching others. So I think being an athlete helps tremendously in the workforce. It helps people also personalize to you more frequently, because you are working with so many different people from completely different cultures.
Right.
So you have a completely different perspective from people who weren't doing athletics in comparison to you who have traveled frequently to work with other athletes, work with other coaches, been to different cultures. So there's a lot of skills from being an athlete that later on helps you in overall well presenting yourself, as well presenting any business that you work for.
Right. And I 100% agree. I think it's so funny because I say this all the time. A lot of people ask me personally how I am so involved in so many different things while training and have so many careers and working on so many projects. And I think I attribute that to the fact that I was a student athlete at an Ivy League school. I had to learn how to make everything work and make everything work well. And so I've been able to carry that into my professional life. But I think another thing that people often underestimate is the fact that, you know, as an athlete, the mentality that you have on the field carries over into everything else that you're doing in life. And so we know what it's like to fail. We know what it's like to be embarrassed. We know what it's like to win. We know what it's like to work hard and lose everything in over like 2 seconds, right? We all know what that feels like. And unfortunately, for a lot of people in the working force, they haven't gotten to experience that at all. You know, there are a lot of people that are afraid of failure, afraid of risk, or afraid of so many things that athletes experience on the day-to-day, right? I tell a lot of people in my work, in the workspace, that, you know, I'm not scared of criticism, because every day I go to practice, my coach is telling me how bad I am all the time, right? So you're constantly used to someone nitpicking at you and those things, but it's so hard to, you know, get that message across to you know, the world at large, because people just don't see how that translates. And so my next question to you is that, have there been situations where you walk into the space, you're an athlete, and you're automatically underestimated, and you have to work twice as hard to prove that you deserve to be in that space? I don't know if it may relate for engineering, because I feel like engineering is a very result oriented. It's either you know how to do the job or you don't. But then for me, in my, you know, more creative industry, I always have to work twice as hard to prove that I'm capable of the job. So I'm curious if you've experienced that as well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely experienced that, especially being a Black woman in an engineering field. It's very easy to be overlooked by colleagues, or there's often a time where I will say something and it'll be kind of like the right direction. Someone else will repeat the same thing I say and word it differently. We call it mansplaining. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, let's go with this person's idea. But even though people are well aware it came directly from my mouth, it is now someone else's idea because they have explained it differently, or it came from their mouth. So quite often there's times, especially being so young in the engineering field, people often assume I don't know what I'm talking about, or think I'm an admin, kind of like just kind of take notes in meetings. Meanwhile, like I'm very much capable. I've handled very big projects. I have worked on my latest project that I had worked on was the Ford Explorer and the Ford Aviator. I had helped launch that vehicle, which is now one of Ford's best-selling vehicles for SUVs. So there's often times where I walk in a room and people don't understand what I'm capable of, but I work twice as hard just to show them what I am capable of, and have them have that respect for me when I walk into the room, and show them how hard I work and how able I am to bring success to the company. And once they see that, they have a newfound respect for me and development. So it's just one of those things where, especially being in a male dominated field and also a very white dominated field here in America, just continuously working twice as hard, even more, just to showcase how capable I am.
Right. But the upside is that as an athlete, you're not afraid of the hard work, right? And
yeah,
so
exactly.
We're used to outworking everyone anyway. So it's it's just, okay, we'll do what we have to do. Unfortunately, we have to do it, but we'll do what we have to do anyway. But I guess my next question for you is, what are some of your other goals beyond the sport? I mean, you're working as an engineer, but are there any bigger goals that you have that extend beyond just engineering, or anything that you're interested in that is not necessarily related to engineering at all?
Yeah, so with the pandemic, I haven't had a whole lot that I've been able to kind of get to. Obviously, one of the hobbies I have is photography. I've recently been kind of getting into that with my new puppy that I got during the pandemic, since I've just been home alone and just training. So I've been trying to like get back into that. Most of my time I do spend a lot of time just training and working, but I'm trying to pick back some of those old hobbies that I had and had a big passion for. Um, so I think my main goal is just kind of like really work on myself, build like myself mentally, get mentally tough for the season, um, make sure I'm taking well care of myself. And I think this pandemic has been really helpful. I got really into like facials and learning a lot about skincare this past year. So I'm gonna probably just build more skills on that. I also recently started wearing my hair natural a lot frequently, so learning how to do my hair by myself. So
Yeah.
that's been a pretty good journey for me this past pandemic. So I've just been building on that. Unfortunately, my camera's not working, so viewers can't see. I kind of like there's this thing called a color wax. So you can put like this
Okay.
color wax to kind of like dye your hair pink. So my hair is currently pink at the moment. And hopefully
Okay.
if you guys have me back on the show, I'll be able to show you or show you my natural hair journey. So yeah, I'm just really just taking time to kind of like find other activities that make me feel good and help me learn. I've been reading quite a bit more. So just working on just building myself up and we're as well as like training and working and
Right.
trying to teach my new puppy tricks.
New dog mom, learning how to do
Yes.
all of the above. You know, the interesting thing about, you know, the pandemic and everything, it's really been a moment of self-discovery for a lot of us. I think a lot of people were just kind of operating, going, and, you know, didn't really stop to really assess who you are, what you're doing, what you want. And so I think for a lot of us, it's really been a moment to really discover ourselves on a holistic level and make peace with the things that we don't like and also improve the things that we like. So I'm always for, you know, people doing things that, you know, enhances the wellness and everything like that. But before we wrap up, though, I do have one final question for you. Is there something in particular about you that, you know, the world should know about you that nobody does? It could be a talent that you have. It could be something that you want to work on, just something that the world should know about Chioma that they don't.
It's funny. I have a very big sweet tooth. I had an interview in Doha talking about I think someone asked me like, okay, what do you want to do next? And like the first thing that came out of my mouth was like, oh, I want to eat cake. So I have a huge sweet tooth. I try to restrict myself kind of like during season just to kind of like stay mentally tough and whatnot. But I'm a big sweet tooth. I love cake. I love ice cream. My sister bakes a lot. I call
Okay.
her my twin sister. She's one of the triplets, but she bakes a lot, so I enjoy eating lots of sweets. So that's something people may not know about me, but I'm a huge sweet tooth.
Okay, no judgment here. No judgment. This is a judgment. There's no judgment here at all. Maybe in your free time, you may learn how to make some desserts and become like this premium dessert chef type person
Oh
later
yeah.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I may not know too much how to bake, but like maybe I can be like my sister's assistant more while she's like baking stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chioma. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for today's episode. If you enjoy the conversation and want to continue, please feel free to continue in the chat box below. If you haven't done so already, follow Athletics Africa and Axxelerate now for more content. And we will see you next week for another episode. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.